The night it all broke started out painfully ordinary. Leftover pasta on the stove, her side of the couch empty, the TV murmuring to no one in particular. Rain pressed softly against the living room window, tracing slow, crooked lines down the glass. The kind of drizzle that makes the city feel far away, like everything is wrapped in cotton. The lamp in the corner cast a tired, yellow cone over our coffee table, where two plates waited, one empty, one with food going cold. Running late again, she had texted an hour earlier. Big case. New client meeting ran over. Sorry, don't wait up. I waited anyway. I always did. Her name is Emma. That's still hard to say out loud, like my tongue is dragging a memory over broken glass. We had been married for 8 years. No kids yet. Not for lack of trying, but life kept giving us delays, new roles, late hours, fertility tests that led to more questions than answers. I used to think we were a team, two stubborn people against the world. Somewhere along the way, the team part started fading, not in a loud, dramatic way, quietly, the way a photograph fades if you leave it in the sun too long. You don't see it day by day, but one morning you wake up and realize the colors are gone. It was little things at first. She started taking her phone with her everywhere, into the bathroom, into the kitchen. Pressed face down on the table between us. Our dinners got shorter. Conversations became logistics, groceries, bills. Did you call the plumber? My mom wants to visit. Your car is making that noise again. No more sharing the stupid memes from work. No more dissecting movies until midnight. Just efficiency. I told myself it was stress. Her promotion last year had turned her into one of the youngest partners at her firm. She carried that title like a weight on her spine. Always hunched forward, always reading another email. It's just a phase, she kept saying. We'll find our rhythm again, I promise. And I believed her, or maybe I needed to. The night it happened, she was supposed to be at a late client dinner. I remember standing at the sink, rinsing plates that barely had a fork mark on them, listening to the ticking of the clock in the hallway. 9:45 p.m. Her last message had come at 7:02. Sorry, this is going longer than expected. Love you. I stared at those two words. Love you. They felt pre-programmed, like something auto-filled by habit, not feeling. The rain picked up, drumming a little harder on the glass. Somewhere outside, a car horn cut through the night, then faded back into the hum of the city. Our apartment felt unusually big. Every empty chair looked accusatory. Every shadow on the wall seemed to ask the same question. Where is she really? I almost ignored the email. It came to our shared laptop, the one we kept on the sideboard for bills and household stuff. I only opened it because I was bored and restless and tired of scrolling through the same 3 apps on my phone. There it was, in the corner of the screen when I woke it up, a calendar notification. Reminder, dinner 8 p.m. Luca Wine Bars. I frowned, the name didn't ring a bell. I clicked it. It was her work calendar. We had synced them once so we could plan weekends. I had forgotten it was still logged in. The description field was what did it, not the name. Not the time, not even the location. Just 3 words, typed in lowercase, like they were a secret whispered into a pillow instead of typed in a shared calendar. Same place as before. My stomach went cold. There is a kind of silence that doesn't come from the room around you. It comes from inside, like someone turned the volume down on your heartbeat, on your breath. I clicked on View Series. The pattern was there, displayed in polite, corporate blue blocks. Every other Thursday, then every Thursday, then sometimes Mondays too, all labeled the same way. Dinner Luca Wine Bar. How did I miss this? I muttered to myself. Because I trusted her, that's how. Because when you're used to seeing your partner as your safe place, it doesn't occur to you to look for exit doors. I opened a browser tab and searched the name of the wine bar. It was downtown, 2 stops away on the train, near her office. The website showed dim lighting, small tables, candles in frosted holders, romantic, private, not the kind of place for team debriefs or client strategy sessions. My chest tightened. Before I could stop myself, I was already putting on my shoes. I pulled on the first jacket I found by the door. My keys clinked in my trembling hand. I didn't have a plan. I just had a direction. The train ride felt both too fast and painfully slow. The carriage was mostly empty. A couple of teenagers at the far end whispered over a phone screen. A woman in a red coat nodded off with her head against the window. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above us as the city flickered by in dark, wet smears. I kept seeing her face in my mind, the way she had smiled at me on our wedding day. The way her hand would find mine under the covers in the morning, instinctive, half asleep. The way she had said love you at 7:02 p.m. like everything was fine. When I stepped off the train, the rain hit harder, colder. The streets shone in fractured reflections of streetlights and passing headlights. My breath came out in short, visible puffs. The wine bar sat on a corner, all floor-to-ceiling glass and warm interior lighting. From the outside, everyone inside looked softened, like they were underwater. Laughter, clinking glasses, murmured conversations. I stood across the street and watched for a moment, hands shoved into my pockets, fingers pressed so tightly around my keys my knuckles ached. Go home, a sane voice in the back of my mind whispered. You don't want to know. If it's innocent, you'll look crazy. If it's not, then what? I crossed the street anyway. Inside, the air smelled like oak, red wine, and something citrusy. Soft jazz played overhead. The hostess gave me a practiced smile. Table for one. I'm actually looking for someone, I said, my voice catching on the last word. My wife, Emma Collins, dark hair, navy blazer. How's she? The hostess' smile faltered just slightly, the way people's expressions shift when they accidentally step into something private. Oh, she's already seated. She glanced over my shoulder, then back at me. I think she's just over. I turned before she finished, my eyes scanning the small clusters of tables, couples, friends, a birthday group. Closer to the back, by the windows, I saw her, Emma. Her hair was pulled back in that messy twist she did when she was trying to look effortlessly put together. Navy blazer, white blouse, the gold necklace I'd bought her for our anniversary. She was not alone. Across from her sat a man I had never seen before. Early 30s maybe, sharper jawline than mine, the kind of stubble that looks intentional. His suit jacket hung off the back of his chair, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. He was leaning forward on his elbows, and she was smiling in that soft, private way I hadn't seen directed at me in months. There was a half-finished bottle of red between them, two glasses close together. I watched her reach across the table and touch his hand. Something in my chest tore, not dramatically, not like a scream, more like a quiet rip through old fabric, the soundless kind. My legs wanted to move, toward her. Away from her, I couldn't tell. She laughed at something he said. It was barely audible over the music, but I knew that laugh. It was the laugh she used to aim at me when I said anything even remotely funny. The one that made me feel like the most interesting man in any room. Now she was giving it to a stranger. I took a step forward. The man noticed me first. His eyes flickered up, curious, then wary as he tracked my approach. Emma's back was still to me, her shoulders relaxed, comfortable. Emma, I said. Her name came out low, almost a whisper, but she heard it. Her entire body stiffened. Slow motion, she turned, wine glass halfway to her lips, eyes catching mine. For a heartbeat, the whole room seemed to hold its breath with us. Daniel, she breathed. She went pale. The glass in her hand trembled. A thin line of red sloshed over the rim and down her fingers. The man looked between us, his expression tightening. Is this, he started, but his voice faded into the background buzz in my head. I wasn't looking at him anymore, just her. The woman I had built my life around, sitting inside a scene I wasn't supposed to see. How long? I asked. The question surprised even me. Not what is this, or who is he, just how long. Her eyes glossed over, tears rising fast. Her mouth opened, closed, the silence stretched. The music felt too loud now. Someone at a nearby table laughed, oblivious. A server walked by balancing a tray of champagne flutes. Daniel, please, she whispered. Not here. She reached out a hand, as if to calm me, as if I was the one who had shattered something sacred. I stared at that hand, the same hand that had just been resting on his. I stepped back, the chair of an empty table bumping into the back of my legs. How long, Emma? I asked again, my voice sharper now, cracking in the middle. The man pushed his chair back slightly, tension running through his posture. Look, man, he said, maybe we should. I cut my eyes to him, finally acknowledging his existence. Who are you? I asked. He hesitated. Luca, he said carefully. We work together. Of course, same place as before. My jaw clenched so tight it hurt. Emma wiped at her face with the back of her hand, trying to steady her breathing. Daniel, can we please go somewhere else to talk? She said. This isn't. Somewhere else, I said, a bitter laugh escaping before I could stop it. Like here, or is there another place I don't know about? Her face crumpled. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I was going to end it, I swear. End what? I asked. The room blurred at the edges. My heart pounded in my ears. Time slowed to a painful crawl, every detail etched in high definition. The candle flame between them, the smear of lipstick on her glass, the crease at the corner of his napkin. Emma's next words came out so quietly I almost didn't hear them. The affair, she said. The jazz track changed. Someone clapped lightly at the bar. A door opened and let in a rush of cold, wet air from outside. I felt the floor tip. I didn't yell, I didn't flip the table. I didn't cause a scene, the way people do in movies when their lives implode. I just stood there, staring at the woman I loved, in that warm, dim room while the rain kept falling outside. And for the first time since I met her, I had no idea who she really was. I turned without another word and walked out into the night, leaving her sitting at that small table with the man whose name matched the calendar entries. Behind me, as the door swung shut and cut off the music, I thought I heard my name. Or maybe it was just the echo of all the nights we should have talked, but didn't. Out on the sidewalk, the rain felt colder than before. I stood under the awning, hands shaking, not sure if I was going to collapse right there or keep walking. In the glass of the wine bar window, my reflection stared back at me. Same face, same eyes, but there was something missing now. Something I wasn't sure I'd ever get back. I took one unsteady breath, then another. Then I stepped away from the window and into the rain, not yet knowing that walking out that door wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning of the slow, quiet collapse of the life I thought I had, and the start of something else I hadn't asked for at all, an emptiness that would follow me into every room of our apartment. Long after she walked away from her affair. The apartment didn't look different when I got home. Same gray couch, same framed photos on the wall, same pair of her slippers half-tucked under the coffee table, but stepping inside felt like walking into a crime scene. Every object was suddenly evidence. Every corner held a version of us that no longer existed. I dropped my keys into the ceramic bowl by the door. The sound rang out too loud, too sharp, bouncing off the quiet. My jacket was soaked through. I shrugged it off and let it fall to the floor instead of hanging it up like I always did. Water pooled around it, darkening the wooden boards. I stood in the center of the living room and just listened. The hum of the fridge, the faint gurgle of pipes in the wall, the clock in the hallway, marking each second that I was no longer the person I had been an hour ago. A part of me expected her to burst through the door any second, rain in her hair, mascara running, apologies tumbling out half-formed. I pictured her reaching for me, begging for a chance to explain. That's how the mind works when it's in shock. It writes softer versions of reality, desperate to avoid the impact. She didn't come home, not that night. I found my phone on the coffee table. 3 missed calls, 2 from her, 1 from an unknown number. Her first voicemail was just my name, said once, tight and breathless, followed by a shaky exhale and the click of disconnection. The second was longer. Daniel, please pick up. We need to talk. I'm coming home. I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to find out like this. I ended the message before it finished. I didn't want to hear her tell me how I was supposed to have discovered her betrayal, as if there's a gentle way to wrap barbed wire. When the doorknob finally turned, it was nearly midnight. The rain had softened to a mist, ghostly against the streetlights outside. The apartment smelled faintly of her perfume as the door opened, that familiar mix of jasmine and something warmer. It used to make me feel safe. Now it made my chest ache. Daniel, her voice called softly into the dim. I didn't answer. I was sitting at the dining table, lights off, just a small lamp on in the corner. The half-eaten pasta still congealed in its bowl between us, untouched. She stepped inside and saw me. Her hair was wet. Her blazer clung to her shoulders. Mascara smudged beneath reddened eyes. She closed the door slowly, like she was trying not to startle a wounded animal. "Hey," she whispered. The word snagged somewhere in the air between us and fell flat. I looked at her, really looked. This was my wife. The woman I had shared a bed with, a bathroom sink with, 1,000 tiny domestic rituals with, and she had still managed to carve out an entire secret life right under my nose. "How long?" I asked again, the same question from the wine bar still unanswered. She swallowed. "A little over 7 months," she said, each syllable barely holding together. 7 months. I let the number roll through me, slow and heavy. 7 months of messages I never saw. 7 months of late nights and client dinners. 7 months of lying in our bed after she showered, wondering why she smelled like a different brand of soap. My mind replayed every moment that had felt off. Every time she turned her phone face down. Every time she flinched when I walked into a room unexpectedly. The fog cleared, and what was left behind was a stark, brutal pattern. "Who ended it?" I asked. "You or him?" She took a tentative step closer, then seemed to think better of it and stopped. "He wanted to keep going," she said. "I told him tonight it was over, that I couldn't do it anymore. I was going to tell you. I just needed." "Needed what?" I cut in. "1 more night." Her shoulders caved inward, like she had been struck. "I know I have no right to ask for your patience, but please. Please let me explain," she said, voice cracking. I leaned back in the chair, forcing my hands to unclench. The wood felt cold under my fingertips. "Explain why you decided to sleep with someone else," I asked quietly. "Or explain why you lied to my face about it for 7 months. Tears spilled over her lash line, tracking down her cheeks. She didn't move to wipe them. "Both," she whispered. "The thing about grief is, it doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in waves." The first one hit me then. Not loud, not dramatic, just this deep, sinking heaviness in my gut, like something permanent was being rearranged without my consent. "Then sit," I said. She slid into the chair across from me, hands twisting together in her lap. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The clock in the hallway kept counting. Finally, she took a breath. "It started stupid," she said. "I know that sounds like an insult, but it's true. It wasn't this big planned thing. It was small, harmless, or that's what I told myself." I stared at the table, at the fork beside her empty plate. "Please don't tell me it started because you were lonely," I said. "I was lonely too. I didn't cheat." She flinched, nodding. "You're right," she said. "I'm not trying to justify it. I just want you to know how it happened. Because you deserve at least that." She told me about late nights at the office, about how this new guy, this Luca, had been assigned to work under her on a major case, about shared takeout, venting about clients, the slow slide from colleagues to confidants. "He listened," she said, voice small. "He made me feel interesting again, seen. Not like a list of unfinished tasks." I thought of all the nights I'd sat on this very couch, waiting for her to come home so I could tell her some trivial story about my day. Half the time she'd been too tired to really listen. I had accepted that. This was marriage, right? Seasons of busyness, sacrifices. I hadn't realized she was giving pieces of herself to someone else during those same nights. It was emotional before it was physical, she continued. We'd text about everything, stupid jokes, memes, work drama, how burned out we were. I kept telling myself it was fine because we hadn't crossed any lines. "You crossed the line the moment you started hiding those messages from me," I said quietly. She closed her eyes. "I know," she whispered. "I know, but at the time it felt like a secret little pocket of my life that was just mine. No expectations, no history. No pressure to be the perfect wife who wasn't giving you a child yet." There it was, the word she didn't say out loud often. Child, our almost baby, the one that hadn't made it past 8 weeks. We had fought after that. Not in a screaming way, in a quiet, exhausted way, about whose fault it was, even though the doctors had told us it wasn't really anyone's. We never fully repaired the crack that loss put in our foundation. "I felt like I was failing you," she said, "in every way, at home, in bed. So when someone looked at me like I was desirable, interesting, capable, I clung to it. I shouldn't have. But I did." "When did it become physical?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly despite my efforts. Her gaze dropped to the table. "About 3 months in," she said, "after that late-night strategy session I told you about." The night, I said, I fell asleep at my desk. I remembered that night clearly. I had sent her a sleepy selfie from our bed with the caption, "Missing you." She had replied with a blurry photo of a stack of files and a coffee cup, saying, "This is my bed tonight." Except it hadn't been. "I hate myself for what I did," she said, suddenly looking up, eyes raw. "Every time I came home, every time you smiled at me, I felt like I was suffocating under what I'd done. But instead of stopping, I kept compartmentalizing, telling myself I could handle the double life until I figured out what I wanted." "And did you," I asked, my throat dry, "figure it out?" Her answer lodged in the thick silence. "That's why I ended it," she said, "because I realized I wanted you. I wanted our life. Not some intense fantasy built in hotel rooms and dim bars, but by then it was too late. I'd already broken everything." The quiet between us was like a third person at the table, listening. "So," I said slowly, "you walked away from him tonight, and then what? You were going to just come home and confess? Or were you hoping that, if you ended it, we could move on without me ever knowing?" Her face twisted. "I don't know," she admitted, voice shaking. "I told him it was over. He didn't take it well. He said I was making a mistake, that you'd never understand me the way he did, that you were too caught up in your own routine to even notice I'd changed." My jaw tightened. "Then you walked out," I said, piecing it together. "And before you could decide whether to tell me or not, I showed up." She nodded miserably. "Yes," she whispered, "you did." We sat there, two people drowning in the same room, unable to reach each other. Eventually she spoke again, her voice barely audible. "Do you want me to leave?" she asked. The question hit me harder than anything else. It opened a trapdoor under my feet, dropping me into a new level of reality. I could tell her to go, pack a bag, call a friend, book a hotel. I could throw the word divorce into the space between us like a grenade and watch everything we'd built explode. Instead, the truth slipped out of me, small and helpless. "I don't know what I want," I said. "I just know I don't want this, any of this." Her face crumpled again, silent tears streaming down. "I'll sleep in the guest room," she said. "I won't touch anything. I'll give you space. Just please don't make any decisions tonight. You're in shock." She wasn't wrong, I was. I watched her stand, shoulders hunched, and walked down the hallway toward the spare room. The same room we had painted together one summer, laughing, planning to turn it into a nursery one day. The door closed with a soft click. The the apartment exhaled. For a long time, I sat at the table, staring at the cooling pasta and the empty chair across from me. The weight in my chest pressed heavier with each passing minute. In the days that followed, I would learn what it meant to be haunted by the details. The brand of his cologne lingering faintly on her scarf. The way her face flickered with guilt when her phone buzzed. The deleted messages that survived in the quiet spaces between us. But that night, all I had was the raw, unshaped grief. And the knowledge that somewhere, out there in the city, there was a man named Luca who had heard my wife say things to him that I would never unhear, even if I never actually heard them. The other man had walked into my marriage quietly. Now I had to figure out whether I could ever walk back into it myself. Alone in the dim kitchen, surrounded by traces of a life that suddenly felt like someone else's, I poured the untouched wine from our counter down the sink. It swirled away in deep red spirals, disappearing into the drain. I watched it go, my hand resting on the cool edge of the sink, and wondered if love could drain away just as quietly. How was anything supposed to feel real again? For a while, us existed in a kind of limbo. We lived in the same apartment but moved around each other like cautious ghosts. She stayed in the guest room. I stayed in our bedroom. Doors closed softly. Footsteps softened. Voices rarely rose above a murmur. Mornings became choreographed silences. She'd wake up earlier, make coffee, and leave a second mug for me on the counter without a note. I'd come out when I heard the click of the front door, take my mug, and drink it staring out at the rain-streaked window like it could answer questions I didn't know how to ask. At work, I was functional. That was the best I could do. I typed emails, attended meetings, nodded at jokes. No one knew that my chest ached every time my phone vibrated, half expecting some new confession to land in my lap. Nights were the worst. Lying in our bed alone, I kept replaying everything she had told me. My mind fixated on scenes I had never witnessed but now couldn't stop imagining. Their first kiss in the dim light of her office, his hand on the small of her back as they left the bar, the way her laughter must have sounded when she was trying to quiet it in a hotel hallway. It wasn't just the sex that hollowed me out. It was the intimacy, the shared jokes, the long, winding conversations at 1 a.m., the parts of her mind that had been open to him while closed to me. She gave me space like she'd promised. No big speeches, no grand gestures, just small, steady attempts. Dishes washed before I got home. Laundry folded and left in a neat stack on the chair in our room. A podcast episode queued up in my app with a simple text. Thought you might like this one. Sometimes, late at night, I'd hear her crying through the thin wall between our rooms. Small, muffled sounds. The kind that come from someone trying not to be heard. Part of me felt a sick satisfaction. Another part wanted to go to her and, hold her, comfort the person who had wounded me. Instead, I lay there, eyes on the ceiling, hands still. About 3 weeks after the night at the wine bar, I got a message from an unknown number while I was on my lunch break. Daniel, this is Luca. The first instinct was to throw my phone across the table. Instead, I stared at the screen, my pulse hammering. Another message came. I'm not trying to start anything. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't know you. That doesn't excuse it, but for what it's worth, I'm out of the picture now. She ended it. I almost laughed. Out of the picture. As if removing himself now could erase the months he had spent standing in the center of my marriage. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. A dozen bitter responses crowded my mind. I deleted each one before I finished typing it. In the end, I wrote only, "Don't contact me again." He didn't reply. That night when I came home, Emma was sitting at the dining table with a notebook open in front of her. Not the legal pads she used for work, a plain, lined notebook with a blue cover. She looked up when she heard the door. "Hey," she said tentatively, "can we talk just for a few minutes?" I wanted to say no, but there was something different in her posture, less frantic guilt, more resignation maybe. Like she had accepted that whatever happened next might not be something she could control. "Okay," I said slowly, hanging my coat on the hook. "Talk." She gestured to the chair across from her. I sat but left my hands resting on my thighs, away from the table, bit of distance where I could manage it. "I've been seeing a therapist," she said without preamble, "twice a week. I didn't tell you because, honestly, I wasn't sure I'd stick with it, but I have, and she asked me to write some things down, for you, only if you wanted to read them." She slid the notebook across the table. I didn't touch it. "What kind of things?" I asked. "Everything," she said. "Why it happened, how I lied to myself, the excuses I used, the ways I betrayed you beyond the obvious, the things I'm doing to make sure I never become that person again. It's all in there." The air between us felt thick. "Is this some kind of defense?" I asked, like a closing argument. Her lips trembled into a humorless almost smile. "No," she said. "If anything, it's evidence against me." But my therapist said that if I ever want to rebuild anything with you, it can't be based on vague apologies. It has to be specific, honest, even if that honesty makes you hate me more. I looked at the notebook. Part of me recoiled at the idea of reading a detailed breakdown of my own betrayal. Another part leaned forward, hungry for clarity, even if it cut deeper. Why now? I asked. Why all this effort now, after you walked away from him? You could have chosen him. Her eyes filled again, but she didn't look away. I thought about it, she said. For a while, I told myself I was torn between two loves. It made me feel less monstrous. But that's not what it was. What I had with him was intense, yes, addictive. It fed the broken, insecure parts of me. It wasn't love, it was escape. And with me, I asked quietly, what was I? Her answer came without hesitation. You were home, she said. You still are. That's what makes all of this so unforgivable. I blew up the one place I was actually safe. We sat with that. I finally reached out and laid my fingertips on the cover of the notebook. I got a text from him today, I said. He said he's out of the picture, that you ended it. She nodded. I blocked him, she said. Deleted everything. Told HR I can't work on the same cases as him anymore. They asked why. I said there was a personal conflict. I'll tell them the full truth if I have to. I know there might be professional fallout. I'll take it. That's mine to carry, not yours. A bitter edge crept into my voice. Nice of you to finally consider what's mine and what's yours, I said. She took the hit without flinching. I deserve that, she said, and worse. But Daniel, can I say something you probably won't want to hear? Since when has that stopped you? I asked. She inhaled slowly. I'm not asking you to forgive me right now, she said. Or ever if you can't. I'm not asking you to stay married to me. I know I blew up the trust between us. What I am asking for is the chance to show you who I am now, not the woman who lied to you for 7 months. The one who is trying every day to understand why she was capable of that and to make sure she never does it again. Whether that's as your wife or just as someone you used to love. Her words landed with a strange, quiet weight. I thought about the morning coffees, the folded laundry, the way she moved around the apartment with a kind of careful reverence now, like she was living in a museum of a life she'd vandalized. I also thought about the nights I'd lain awake imagining her with him, the bile that rose in my throat when I pictured his hands where mine used to be. Do you still love him? I asked. She blinked, startled. That's complicated, she said slowly. Part of me was addicted to who I got to be around him, but when I think about him now, I don't feel love. I feel shame and regret. Not just for what I did to you, but for how I lied to myself. I let him become my mirror because I was too scared to look in my own. I absorbed that. The rain started again outside, soft at first, then building. The apartment lights cast pale reflections on the window pane. Do you still love me? She asked, voice tiny. The question crawled under my skin. It would have been easier if I could have said no, if her betrayal had switched something off cleanly. But love doesn't work like that. It lingers, even in spaces that feel uninhabitable. I don't know what my love for you is anymore, I said finally. It's bruised, twisted up with anger and humiliation and loss. Some days I feel nothing. Other days I miss you so much it feels like someone's sitting on my chest. Her hand inched forward on the table, stopping halfway between us. She didn't reach all the way, just left it there, an offering. I'll take that over indifference, she said softly. As long as you're feeling something, there's something real between us, even if it's ugly right now. Ugly felt like an understatement. I looked at her hand. At the gold band still on her finger, mine felt heavier on my own hand these days, like a ring made of lead. I'm not ready to touch you, I said. Her fingers curled in on themselves, but she nodded. I understand, she whispered. I pulled my hand back from the notebook. I'll read this, I said. Not tonight, but I will, and when I'm done, we'll talk again. Once, honestly, about whether there's anything here worth trying to rebuild. Or whether the kindest thing we can do for each other is let go. Her mouth trembled around a word she didn't say. Okay, she managed. I'll be in the other room. She stood, moved around the table, then paused beside my chair. For a second I thought she might reach out, touch my shoulder, my hair, something. Instead, she just looked down at me, eyes shining in the low light. I know I have no right to say this, she whispered, but I'm going to anyway. I am so deeply, irreversibly sorry, Daniel, not just for the affair, but for how I made you doubt your worth. You were never not enough. I was the one who was broken. Then she walked away, leaving the faint scent of jasmine in the air. I stared at the blue notebook, the edges of the pages slightly bent from use. Part of me wanted to throw it in the trash. Another part wanted to devour every word, as if the truth contained there could finally set me free from the loop playing in my head. Instead, I closed my eyes and just listened. The rain, the distant traffic, her quiet footsteps down the hallway. She had walked away from her affair, but the question that would haunt me in the weeks that followed wasn't whether she could come back from what she'd done. It was whether I could ever let her. Mourning has a different sound when your life is in transition. It's quieter somehow, not because the world has changed, but because you're listening to different things. The drip of the coffee machine, the rattle of a spoon in a mug, the almost imperceptible creak of floorboards as someone you used to sleep beside moves in a room down the hall. 2 months after the night at the wine bar, the rain finally stopped. Sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of our living room in pale, hesitant beams. The city outside hummed with its usual Monday routine, buses sighing at stops, car doors closing, footsteps on the sidewalk. Inside, the apartment felt lighter, not healed, not whole, just less suffocating. The blue notebook lay open on the coffee table in front of me. I had read every word, slowly, in fragments. Some pages with shaking hands, others with a numb detachment that scared me more than the anger ever had. She had not held back. It was all there. Her insecurities, her rationalizations, the small betrayals that built up to the big one. The lies she'd told me, the lies she'd told herself, the warped sense of validation she'd gotten from being wanted by someone new, the cheap thrill of secrecy, morphing into a cage she didn't know how to exit. There were no excuses in those pages, only admissions and attempts to understand the version of herself I had never met. Knowing her motives didn't undo the hurt, but it did rearrange it. Gave it edges I could trace with my mind, instead of just stumbling into it blind every time I remembered her laughing at that small table with him. Emma sat in the armchair by the window, a mug wrapped in both hands. She had given me space while I read like we'd agreed. No hovering, no "what page are you on" texts, just the quiet presence of someone waiting for a verdict they were prepared not to like. The air between us felt different this morning, not tense, not charged, just still. I finished it, I said finally, closing the notebook. She set her mug down carefully, fingers lingering on the handle for a moment longer than necessary. "Okay," she said, voice soft. "Do you want to talk about it?" I nodded. "Yeah," I said. "I think we have to." She shifted slightly in her chair, folding one leg beneath her, body angled toward me. The morning light caught the faint shadows under her eyes. She looked older than she had a year ago. "So did I first," I said. "I need you to know, reading all of that didn't make me feel better. It made me feel worse." "At least at first." Her eyes flashed with pain, but she nodded. "I figured it might," she said. "It made everything real," I continued. "The little details, the times you chose to text him instead of answering me. The jokes you shared that I never heard, the way you used my predictability as cover." She flinched. "Don't apologize yet," I said gently. "Just listen." She pressed her lips together and nodded again. "But," I went on, "it also showed me that you're not hiding anymore. From me or from yourself. That matters. A lot more than I thought it would." She exhaled, shoulders sagging a fraction. "When I first found out," I said, "I saw everything in black and white. You cheated. I was betrayed. End of story. But reading about your fear, your shame, your self-disgust, I realized something uncomfortable." "What?" she whispered. "You were already suffering before I ever walked into that wine bar," I said. "Not in a way that excuses you. Nothing does. But in a way that makes it clear. The woman who did this wasn't happy. Even when she was with him." Tears shimmered in her eyes. "I wasn't," she said. "I kept trying to convince myself I was, that I'd found some missing piece. But mostly I felt like I was watching myself from the outside, yelling at myself to stop." "I believe you," I said quietly. "And that complicates things, because it means I can't just put you in the villain box and lock the lid. You're human, flawed like me. You made catastrophic choices, but you're also the person who held my hand in the ER, who stayed up all night with me when my dad died, who learned how to make my favorite soup from scratch because I told you it reminded me of home." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I'm still that person," she whispered. "Underneath the worst thing I've ever done." "I know," I said. Silence settled between us like dust in morning light. "So where does that leave us?" she asked. The question had been circling my mind for weeks, therapy sessions of my own. Long walks alone, late-night talks with the ceiling. There was no simple answer, no version of this story where everyone walks away unscarred. "It leaves us here," I said. "In this room, two people who shared a life, one who burned it. One who's been standing in the ashes, trying to figure out whether to rebuild on the same ground." Her hands tightened around each other. "And," she pressed gently, "have you figured it out?" I looked at her, really looked. At the woman who had broken my trust. At the woman who had then done the hard, unglamorous work of owning every shard of that break without demanding immediate redemption. At the woman who had, for the past 2 months, honored every boundary I drew, no matter how much it hurt her. I've realized something, I said slowly. I don't want to spend the rest of my life being the man whose whole story is my wife cheated on me. Her brow furrowed. Neither do I, she said. I deserve more than a life built around your worst mistake, I continued. Around my worst pain. I deserve mornings that aren't haunted by what you did with someone else. And you deserve the chance to grow into the person you're trying to be, without having to watch me bleed from the same wound over and over. Her breath hitched. Are you saying it's over? She asked, barely audible. The word hung there heavy and merciless. Over. I'm saying, I replied softly, that I forgive you, but I can't stay married to you. Her reaction wasn't dramatic. No wail, no collapse. Just a small, sharp intake of breath and a quiet, breaking sound that seemed to come from somewhere deep in her chest. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again, gaze steady despite the tears. Forgive but leave, she said slowly, tasting the shape of it. That sounds backwards. It used to sound that way to me too, I said, but forgiveness isn't the same thing as reconciliation. Staying would mean trying to glue us back together around a crack that runs right through the center. I'd always be checking your phone in my head, questioning late nights, flinching when you touched me. That's not a marriage, it's a sentence. For both of us. Her shoulders trembled. So this is mercy, she asked with a sad half-smile, divorcing me. In a way, I said, mercy for the part of me that still loves you and doesn't want to twist that love into something bitter and suspicious. And mercy for the part of you that's trying, really trying, to be different. I don't want my proximity to your worst choice to be the thing that keeps you stuck in it forever. She swallowed hard, tears sliding freely now. I always thought forgiveness meant choosing to stay, she whispered. Sometimes it does, I said, in other stories, for other people, but for me, forgiveness means letting go of the version of our life where this never happened. It means accepting that you were capable of this, and choosing not to spend the next 10 years punishing you for it day by day. She covered her mouth with her hand, shoulders shaking. I don't deserve that, she said through her fingers. Maybe not, I said gently, but you need it, and so do I. We sat there together, crying quietly in the morning light, two people grieving the same relationship from opposite sides of a broken bridge. After a while, she dropped her hand and wiped her cheeks with the heel of her palm. What happens now? She asked. We take it one step at a time, I said. We talk to a lawyer, we divide our things, we figure out who gets the apartment. We tell our families, we let this chapter end, not with a slammed door, with a closing one, softly. She gave a broken laugh. Trust you to make even our divorce sound gentle, she said. It doesn't feel gentle, I admitted. It feels like tearing off a limb, but I'd rather do that once than keep cutting into the same wound every day. She stared at me for a long moment. Can I ask you something selfish? She said. Sure, I replied. When you think of me in 5 years, she said, what do you want that memory to feel like? The question caught me off guard. I pictured myself older, in some other kitchen, alone or with someone new. A different coffee mug in my hand, a different window, different light. Her name comes up in conversation or in my own head. I want to remember you fully, I said slowly, not just as the woman who cheated on me. Not just as the woman who held me when I cried after my dad's funeral. I want to remember that you were both, that you were human, that we had real love, and that when it broke, we chose not to destroy each other further in the fallout. Tears spilled over again, but she smiled, a small, fragile thing. I can live with that, she said. We talked logistics after that. Timelines, finances, who would tell who. It was mundane, almost absurdly so, given the magnitude of what we were dismantling. But in a way, the ordinariness of it was comforting. Life, even in its endings, is made of practical details. When she stood to leave for work, she hesitated by the door. Can I? She started, then stopped. Would it be too much if I hugged you, one last time, as your wife? The question landed softly but carried the weight of 8 years. My chest tightened. Part of me wanted to say no, to protect the fragile boundary I'd built. Another part of me, the part that remembered Sunday mornings tangled in sheets and shared headphones on the couch and laughter over burnt pancakes, leaned forward. Yeah, I said quietly. You can. She stepped toward me slowly, giving me every chance to change my mind. When her arms came around me, it was careful at first, light. Then, as I didn't pull away, she held on tighter. Her head rested against my chest. I could feel her tears soaking through my shirt. My own eyes burned as I wrapped my arms around her, muscle memory kicking in. We stood there like that for a long moment, two people holding on and saying goodbye at the same time. Eventually, I loosened my grip. She did too, stepping back with reluctance. Thank you, she whispered. For what? I asked. for not turning me into a monster in your story, she said, even though I earned it. You're not a monster, I said. You're the woman I loved, who made a series of terrible choices, and I'm the man learning that sometimes loving someone means letting them go for both your sakes. She nodded, tears slipping down again. Goodbye, Daniel, she said softly. Goodbye, Emma, I replied. She picked up her bag, opened the door, and stepped out into the hallway. Morning light flooded in behind her, outlining her figure for a brief second before the door swung shut with a quiet click. The apartment exhaled again. I walked to the window and watched as she emerged onto the street below. The sky was clear for the first time in weeks. No rain, just pale blue, stretched thin over the city. She paused on the sidewalk, tilted her face up to the sun for a brief moment, then moved on, swallowed by the flow of people heading to work. The chair across from me at the table was empty. But for the first time since the night at the wine bar, the emptiness didn't feel like a threat. It felt like possibility, scary, open, undefined. I made a new pot of coffee, sat at the table. Let the morning light settle over the worn wood. This was not the future I had planned, but it was the one I had. And as the city moved quietly outside, I let myself believe just a little that somewhere beyond the ruins of this marriage, there was a version of me who could sit at a different table, with a different kind of peace in his chest. Not because he had forgotten what happened, but because he had chosen to let it go.